Hello students, today we're going to do the last lesson in Unit 5, Lesson 5.4, Reviewing All Solutions. So make sure you take out your notebook, label the page as 5.4, Reviewing All Solutions. You're going to need a piece of graph paper with at least a couple of graphs on it and a calculator. Please make sure you show all your work. This is one last review of all the ways of solving a system of equations. Feel free to pause the video to get everything that you need. Pause the video whenever you need to try one on your own, and go back if you need to. So we're going to start out with our 5.1, solving systems of equations by graphing. So first thing you want to make sure is that both equations are in slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. If they're not, you need to change it, and then we need to go through it. So the first equation, the first thing we graph is our y-intercept, which would be -3. So we're going to start at 0, go down 3. Here's our first point. And then our slope is 2 over 1. So that means we're going to go up 2 to the right 1, up 2 to the right 1, and we're going to keep doing that until we get all the way through the graph. And that means I'm going to go down 2 to the left 1 on the other side. And I'm not going to draw a line. You can make sure you use a straight edge, but I'm going to go to my next equation, y equals x plus 2. So y-intercept first, which is a +2, which would be right here. And my slope is 1 over 1, so that means I'm going to go up 1 to the right 1. And I'm going to keep going, and I can stop right there because there is our solution. That's where they cross. So looking at where that is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there it is. Now, again, we talked about double checking. So our y is 7. So we need it to equal 7. So 2 times 5 is 10. Minus 3 gives us 7. X is 5 plus 2 is also 7. So we know we did it correctly. So this is the one we just did. So we don't need to do that one again. We have our first equation in slope-intercept form. So let's change this one. Well, let's graph this one first. So our y-intercept is 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And our slope is a -1 over 1. So we go down 1 to the right 1. So this is what that line is going to look like all the way through the graph. So we have it whenever we're ready to cross it. So let's change this one to slope-intercept form. So we're going to subtract x on both sides, which gives us 3y equals a negative, and I'm going to put the 1 in there, plus 0. Divide by 3, so y equals a -1/3 x, and it's still plus 0. So our y-intercept is going to be 0. -1/3, which means I'm going to go down 1 and to the right 3. Down 1 and to the right 3. And here's our solution. That's where we crossed. We can stop right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And 1, 2, but it's down, so it's -2. So again, we can plug it back in. Y is -2. So a -6 plus 4 gives us a -2. So we're good there. We get a -2. Oops, nope, this should be 6. I'm sorry. This should be 6. And this should be -2. So 3 times -2 is a -6. A +6 plus a -6 does give us 0. Okay, the last one, we need to change both of them into slope-intercept form. So the first one, I'm going to subtract x. I'm going to work my way up this time. I get a -y equals a -x minus 2. We can divide by a -1, or we can just go through and change all of the signs. So negative is a positive, negative is a positive, negative is a positive. So y equals x plus 2. So to graph that, we get our y-intercept, which is positive 2. Our slope, which is 1 over 1. So we go up 1 to the right 1. And again, I'm going to go all the way through the graph. Hopefully graphing these are not a problem anymore. We've had plenty of practice on this. Again, if you have any questions, though, make sure you ask. Second equation, I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. So I get negative 3y equals a negative 2x minus 2. I'm going to divide by a negative 3. So y equals, and a negative divided by a negative is a positive, so I'm going to leave that as 2/3 x. And again, it's going to be plus another 2/3. So here's what... So this one's going to go up 2/3, and then we're going to go up 2 and to the right 3. Clearly not going to cross that way, so I'm going to go the other way. So down 2 and to the left 3, and this is about as close as I'm going to get. I don't like this one because it's going to cross kind of in the middle someplace. It will cross, there will be a solution, but I don't like this one. So please know that whenever I give you a problem, that you're going to get solutions like we did on these two. So we'll just ignore that one for right now. Let's move on to the next one. Now we're going to solve systems of equations by substitution. And this is, remember, where we take y equals negative 3x minus 7. We take that expression, negative 3x minus 7, and we substitute it in for the y. So if we rewrite that, we get negative 3x minus 7 equals x plus 9. So we took that and we substituted it in for the x. Now we're going to solve this like we would any other equation. I'm going to add 3x to both sides, making sure I keep things positive, make things a little bit easier. Negative 7 equals 4x plus 9. I'm going to subtract 9 on each side. Gives me negative 16 equals 4x. Divide by 4, so x equals a negative 4. Now we're going to substitute that negative 4 in for x. So I'm going to put that right there. So y equals negative 4 plus 9. And if we do our math, we get 5. So our solution is negative 4, 5. And I'm going to double check. 5 is my y, so I can replace those with 5. Negative 4 is my x, so negative 3 times a negative 4 gives me a positive 12 minus 7. That does equal 5. Negative 4 plus 9, we already did that down here. That also equals 5. So this is the problem we already did, so let's work on number 5. We have y equals 2x plus 16. That's the expression we're going to put in for y. So we get 1/2 x plus 2x plus 16 equals a negative 4. Let's put our x's together, and I'm going to go ahead and change that into a decimal. So 2.5x plus 16 equals negative 4. Subtract our 16 from both sides. We get 2.5x equals a negative 20. Divide by 2.5 on both sides. So x equals a negative, and then it's 8. So now that we know x is negative 8, we're going to plug that in for this x right here. So y equals 2 times negative 8 and plus 16. So 2 times a negative 8 is a negative 16, plus 16, our y is going to equal 0. So x is negative 8, y is 0, there's our solution. And if we plug it in, half of negative 8 is a negative 4, plus 0 gives us a negative 4. 2 times a negative 8, we just kind of did that one. That gives us a negative 16 plus 16. That also equals 0. Let's do one more. Now, We do not have an equation that's equal to a variable, but I'm going to look at this one right here. I have x all by itself. So I'm going to subtract 3y, and that's going to give me my equation equal to one of the variables, 20 minus 3y. So I'm going to plug this in for my x up here. And with that negative, that's just going to change the sign of everything. So instead of a positive 20, it's going to be a negative 20, negative 20. Instead of a negative 3y, it's going to be plus 3y. Then I'll just continue, plus 5y equals 28. Put my y's together, negative 20 plus 8y equals 28. I'm going to add 20 because it's a negative 20, so I can add 20 to get rid of it. I get 8y equals 48. But now I'm going to divide by 8, so y equals 6. So if we plug this 6 now in for this y, 3 times 6 is 18. So 20 minus 18, x equals 2. So our solution is 2, 6. And let's try plugging it in. Negative 2 plus 5 times 6. So it's negative 2 plus 30. That does give us 28. X is 2, y is 6, so that would be 18. So 2 plus 18 does give us 20, so we have our solution. If you have any questions on substitution, make sure you ask. Let's go through the last way we solved systems of equations. This one is by elimination. This is when we cancel out one variable. We're going to add our two equations together. We can do that on this one right away. A negative x plus an x cancels out. That leaves us with 8y equals 48. We're going to divide by 8 on each side. Y equals 6. So now that we know y equals 6, we can plug that back in someplace. I'm going to use the second equation just so that I don't have to deal with a negative. So x plus 3y equals 20. We plug our 6 in for y. So x plus 18 equals 20. We're going to subtract our 18. So x equals 2. So our solution is 2, 6. And again, checking our work, I'm going to use the first equation now. I get a negative 2 and 5 times 6, so that's 30. So negative 2 plus 30 equals 28. Now, if you notice, this is like the last one we just did, and we'd solved it a different way and still got the same answer. So let's see, let's try number 3. We'll do that one first. I'm going to subtract my 3y here because my first equation, I have 3x equals negative 4y plus 10. And if I subtract 3y, that gives me 4x, these cancel out there, equals a negative 3y plus 11. So if I look here, I now have everything lined up. Let's see, let's look at my y's. I have 2 negatives. Let's multiply this whole first one by 4 and this whole second one by a negative 3. That way this second one will turn into a positive. So doing distributive property all the way through, I get 16x equals a negative 12y plus 44. Okay, let's do our second equation. Negative 3 times 3 gives me a negative 9x. Negative 3 times a negative 4 gives me a positive 12y. And negative 3 times 10 gives me a negative 30. So now I'm going to add these together. So 16x minus 9x gives me 7x. And our negative 12y plus 12y cancels out. So then we do our 44 minus 30, and that's going to give us 14. Divide both sides by 7, x equals 2. So now we can plug that back in. I'm going to use my first equation here. So 3 times our x is 2. 3 times 2 equals negative 4y plus 10. So that equals 6. So let's go ahead and solve the equation like we normally would. Negative 4 equals a negative 4y. Divide by negative 4, y equals 1. So our solution is 2, 1. And again, to go back in, this one equals 6. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4 plus 10. That would give us 6. 4 times 2 is 8. 3 times 1 is 3. 8 plus 3 gives us 11. So we did it correctly. So let's try. I'm going to erase all of this so that we have room for our next one. Let's try number 2. It's not going to let me erase everything. So we're going to try number 2. I need to simplify or get them equal. I have x and y, so I just need to add 4 to the other side. So if you can ignore all of this, let's block it off a little bit. There we go. I'm going to bring down our first equation, 2x minus y equals 1. And then I have x plus 3y equals 4. So I think I am going to multiply this first equation by 3 because that will give me a negative 3. So it gives me 6x. 3 times 2x is 6x. 3 times a negative y gives me a negative 3y. And 3 times 1 gives me 3. So now if I add them together, I get 7x. My y's cancel out, equals 7. Divide by 7, x equals 1. So let's plug that back in to our first equation. 2x minus y equals 1. 2 times 1 gives me 2 minus y equals 1. Subtract 2 from both sides. I get a negative y equals a negative 1. So I'm going to make it a positive y and a positive 1. So our solution is 1, 1. And again, if we plug it in, 2 times 1 is 2 minus 1. That gives me 1. This is a 1. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 plus 1 is 4. Minus 4 gives me 0. So let's do a word problem, and we can solve it however we want to. Now that you know how to do all of them, you can solve it in any way you want to. However, the first thing we have to do is write our equations. A gift basket that contains jars of jam and packages of bread mix costs $45. So here's our first equation. I'm going to call jars of jam X and bread mix Y. So there are 8 items in the basket. So there's our first equation. X plus Y equals 8. Jars of jam cost $6 each. So that's 6X plus the bread mix is $5 each, 5Y. And we already know that it costs $45. Now, you can do this a couple different ways. If you want to change them both into slope-intercept form and graph them, you can. But I'm looking at this one, and that may not be the easiest thing to do. So I can solve it one of 2 ways. I can do substitution, which should be relatively easy. I subtract y from both sides. I get x equals 8 minus y, and I can plug that in for x. Or I could multiply this first equation by, let's say, a negative 6. That would give me a negative 6x a negative 6y, and a negative 48. And I put the other equation underneath. So my x's would cancel out. That would leave me with a negative y. And a negative 48 plus 45 gives me a negative 3. So y equals a positive 3. And if I take that first equation again, x plus y equals a negative 8, y is going to be 3. Subtract 3 on both sides, x equals 5. So let's do the substitution over here. 6, and I'm going to put in 8 minus y, plus 5y equals 45. I'm going to do my distributive property. That equals 48 minus 6y plus 5y equals 45. Put my y's together. 48, that's going to give me a negative y equals 45. Subtract 48, and you can probably tell already, negative y equals a negative 3. Change of both, I got the same thing as I got over there. So you could plug it in and get your x equals 5. So our solution now has to be in words. X is 5. X, remembers, were jars of jam. So I have 5 jars of jam. And my y is 3. I have 3 bread mix. And that is the answer that I'm looking for. So your homework is the worksheet in Schoology. It's called the Real World Worksheet. It has, I think, about 9 problems that are real world. So you'll be able to write the 2 equations and then solve them however you want to. And we will check it next time in class. If you have any questions, make sure you send me a message. Good luck.